Hi. Okay, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I really had to hustle. Look, see my dress? Yeah, I really had to hustle to get close to being on time. And it seems that despite my best efforts, I might be a minute late. I'm not sure. But if I am, I do apologize. This is Exopolitical diplomacy. And we're going to talk about truth and logic tonight. It's a Saturday night, so I hope you're having a good time. I'm sorry to always adjust my clothes. I don't have much confidence. So when I see myself on film, I'm like, oh dear, let me fix it up a bit. But I want to talk to you a little bit about logic. And when I was doing the research, I found out some incredibly interesting things that really helped me develop the argument that I'm seeking to develop here. Okay? Of course, I always have to mess with my lights, right? Always have to be messing with the lights in here to try to get things better. Well, that's not necessarily better. But okay, I'll quit. I'll quit being distracting. Okay, I always let you know how I'm doing. I'm doing all right. I won't say that I had the best day, but it wasn't that bad. Early this morning, while I'm constantly trying to. Oh my God, I was in so many meetings in my dreams last night. It wasn't even funny. I mean, I'm talking about intense. And it's been that way for a couple of nights, because we're so close to the events. We're so close to the new beginnings. We're so close to the end. And I really am finding it hard to be a leader through this part. It's been hard to be a leader the whole time because sometimes I wonder why God even created me, okay? I just wonder, why did you even create me, God? I don't fit in anywhere. Nobody understands me, and I don't fit in anywhere, and I'm rejected all the time. Why did you even make me? Did I get that right? Oh, it'll do, pig. It'll do. That's a line from Babe. Anyway, I'm hanging out online looking for answers like I usually do. I'm either looking for information or answers to give me half of a clue of why I'm here under this condition, why nobody seems to see me, why I don't get any views on my videos, whether I'm on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And I was just feeling like something wonderful was going to happen. So early this morning, the light on this thing just automatically came on. It just came on by itself at a point in my dream when things were kind of coming together. This light just came on all by itself. But before that light came on, that picture up there, it fell off the wall. It fell off the wall. It made a big noise. Okay. And I was expecting something to happen today. I really was. I was expecting the Star Trek crew to come and take me away. Yes, that's really what I'm expecting. But I don't see anything anywhere to confirm that belief in me, okay? I just have my dreams and clues in my past and interdimensional experiences. So I woke up feeling like I'm ready for something amazing to happen. I'm ready for the next level of my existence to start coming true. And the hour went by, and nothing more happened except those things that happened that I told you about. The picture falling and the light coming on, which I think was enough to indicate that there was some kind of presence in here with me, some kind of presence paying attention. It's hot. It's hot. That's why I was suggesting the fan. Some kind of presence paying attention to me, some kind of presence responding to me, even if it was a jokester. Okay. And then I decided that if this really is my reality and I'm just going to be on social media forever telling my story, and that no one's going to hear me and no one's going to see me and no one's even going to know I'm alive, then what's the point? Okay, and then I saw Marcus Smith today, the guy who attacked me with the ear nanobot and the flesh melting chemicals that disfigured me. I see him again walking around, and once again today he's walking around with somebody who looks out of his social class, somebody who looked more classy than him, more educated, more classy than him, which last time I saw that person or a person like that, I thought for sure it was his military office superior. So once again, I feel like, oh my God, I'm in a freaking concentration camp. The Europeans in power have deprived me of all of my inheritances, and inheritances are the greatest form of wealth, according to Gerald James, Yale economist, who wrote a book about it in the 1990s. That is the most assured way to wealth. So here I am living in poverty because I was expecting my inheritances. And my inheritances from Isaac Martin to Petty, MD, and Llewellyn Latimer Green to Petty, JD, would have made me a multi-millionaire, perhaps a trillionaire by now. And with that money, I would have gone about creating influences to affect the laws that we are being subjected to, because the laws are not fair and they're very biased, and they're biased against Americans and our freedom and our prosperity and our ability to find happiness. We are not allowed to be the children of God because we are conquered. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, wow, how come I ain't got no friends? How come I ain't got no audience? Why doesn't anybody love the Runningcloud, right? And I'm thinking, how long am I going to do Commander Runningcloud's log if I'm going to be sitting here in this room? My credibility will be shot, right? So I'm looking around, to the ET community, trying to get some confirmation that the story of me that I've been given is valid and true. And I'm just not seeing enough. Okay. I'm just not seeing enough. I'm just not seeing enough from experts that validates my story, my position. I just don't see a lot. And I was thinking that makes me very sad, but as long as I'm here, I have to get along. And part of the way I get along is by publishing. I always wanted to be an author, and books are not as popular as you watching me on this TV, right? I mean, wouldn't you rather sit here and watch me than sit down and read my book? Of course you would. So I moved with the times. I adapted with the times, and I said, yeah, well, I wanted to be a science fiction writer, and my life is turning into a science fiction, right? Now, faith is so important when you're a leader. And I did see a message about faith today from somebody, that I follow. And faith is so important because when you're a leader and you're in the middle of an empty space because you got there first, because that's where God led you, because you're the leader, And you look around and there's nobody over there to give you support, and there's nobody over there to give you support, because you're all alone, because you are the leader. Well, when your thoughts don't agree with what the popular thinkers are saying, you've really got to have faith. You've got to have faith in your purpose, faith in your raison d'être, your reason for being. You've really got to have faith. And just before I got on, I was remembering the dream I had just before I went to Yale graduate school, which really, marked me as an enemy of the deep state, when they saw that I was not a part of the go along, get along crew, that I was really there for the people and the benefit of the people of the United States of America. Outside the corporation, the people were my primary interest, because I love people and I care about people. And I don't care that much about power, but I do care about not getting my estate. So they deprived me of the credentials that I would need to get an audience, and they deprived me of the wealth I would have inherited to get an audience. So they deprived me of any power to spread the word of what my truth is. And I just remembered this dream I had. And here's something really cool. LeVar Burton was like the spokesman of my dream. He was the guide in this dream. And LeVar Burton was on the cast of the new Star Trek, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. So even that ties in to my dreams for my future, my future and my purpose in this bitch. And in that dream, people were being prosecuted for sex scandals. Sex addicts were being prosecuted for sex scandals. And there were angels singing, choir of angels singing. And there was a big round auditorium, and LeVar was at the bottom of it on the platform, telling me, to observe things. And when I woke up from that dream, I wrote it down, but of course that book has been lost a long time. But I wrote that dream down. More importantly, I named it to give it a better index in my memory. And I dreamed, and I named that dream A Test of Faith, because I knew that dream was heralding the beginning of a period in my life where my faith was going to be my strongest ally, my best personal characteristic, because I was going to find myself standing in the wilderness of reason and logic and goodness and godliness, all by myself. Okay? Now, when I say all by myself, I mean from my contemporaries, because believe you me, I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't even be allowed to do this broadcasting if I didn't have very, very powerful allies that keep my enemies at bay. If I did not have the support of superior beings, I wouldn't be here today. And I know that. So I'm not all alone. I'm just all alone amongst my peers. So I started to think a lot about that. I started to think about how many people, especially Black Americans, that actually could be supporting me, but they aren't. And some of them are even on the other side of the fence. And I'm thinking, they're so afraid to help me, and they can hardly help themselves. But how did we get this way? How did Americans get to a position where we live in so much fear that the idea of free speech comes with so much risk that we are barely able to undertake it? How did we get here? How did we get to this position in our lives where lies are being promoted and everybody pretends that those lies are the truth? And this seems to have spread through the whole wide world, doesn't it? I mean, it seems to have spread through the whole wide world that in order to speak up with what's logical and true, you have to really have a powerful offensive to protect you. Because the liars and deceivers have insinuated themselves into so much control on this planet that every individual feels fear within herself or himself, that if they dare to be true to their own minds, that they will risk the bread they can put in their mouth. They will risk the quality of their suits. They will risk their lives, their freedom. They'll end up like me, living in a concentration camp where Marcus Smith can hurt me and still walk around free and stand in the stairwell and just stare at me while I'm standing there praying to God. Please punish my enemies. Please punish my enemies. No one should have to live like this. No one should be subjected to this kind of abuse and oppression. Dear sweet heavenly Lord, please protect the people. Knowing I prayed that prayer many times before, and I'm still here with a burnt up face and critters in my ears and critters in my teeth, unable to leave the room because I'll be attacked and killed. If I'm lucky, right? Otherwise, I'll be tortured as I am being tortured now. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how come companies like Geico can be committing fraud and nobody says a word about it. How can Honda dealerships steal parts off of people's cars and steal people's cars themselves and substitute flood damaged salvage vehicles for new cars and then repossess those cars and sell them someplace else? Now, all these outlandish things have happened to me. These actually happened to me. So is it any wonder that I'm here wondering, who am I? Why am I here? What kind of world is this? This world makes no sense to me. I'm in the wrong freaking world. How come everybody else knows how to get along and I can't even perceive how you get along in a place this corrupted? With people that have the mentality that they can hurt you and have no shame, no conscience, nothing. And I'm just feeling like totally out of place. And that's how I'm feeling today. I'm feeling totally, totally out of place. And the only thing that I have is my faith. And I'm just not seeing enough confirmation that anybody who claims to know the future knows of my existence. You've got all these people saying that they know the future. You've got all these people saying that they're in contact with the extraterrestrials and the galactic councils and things, yet none of them have heard of me. Then I can't possibly be who I think I am, can I? And if I'm not who I think I am, then I'm just a victim here. And my whole life is a delusion to keep me as a subject of these biological weapons so that I don't bolt or run or kill myself, so that I can remain the object of their observations while they deploy these weapons on me and keep me in a concentration camp. What other purpose could I serve? If this is the reality, then I'm a victim, and I will never stop being a victim, because ever since I became an adult, the European national racist machinery has persecuted me. They've denied me my rewards. They've denied me the freedom to enter the businesses that I've chosen. They've denied me the opportunity to develop my own business. And when they denied me they denied me the credentials from Harvard and Yale that would have given me a voice of authority from the academic level of society. They denied me everything, including my inheritances, my $1 billion inheritances from my neurosurgeon stepfather and my judge mother. How could that be? How could that be? How could so many enemies of America, so many Europeans get so much power? And it's happened over years. It's happened over years. But where I'm going to start And it's so, the research I uncovered is so wonderful. When you hear the big climax of my research, you're going to be like, click, 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 click. Now things make more sense. So this is a conversation about logic. Now, if you do a Google search on logic, the first thing you'll see is a European rap star. Google has been constructed to present popular culture stars at the top of their search list. So when you're trying to be intelligent and in search for intelligent things, they're going to throw popular culture in your face. Then the next level was computer logic, okay, which has nothing to do with thinking or reason or cognitive thought, right? Nothing to do with philosophy, the deep stuff. So I actually had to do a search for logic in philosophy in order to get to where I wanted to go. Wikipedia predates Google. So a lot of the data on Wikipedia is actually factual. It actually has content. It has not been constructed or derived. Earlier today, I was trying to find what they used to call the land that the United Nations granted to the European Jews. I was like, well, what was it called before? And do you want to know that Google and Wikipedia start with when the British named the land Palestine? They don't even talk about what the land was named before the Europeans named it. So much like the biblical Adam, they got atomic level power in cyberspace, that the names that they give things stick. So you can imagine my surprise when I looked at an ancient map of the area, the best one I could find, which wasn't that good. And I saw Canaan, Caan. But before that, I saw Phoenicians. And I said, Phoenicians? The Phoenicians are in the Bible. The Phoenicians are all over Greek history. The Phoenicians were a powerful, influential people that made the color red a global commodity. The Phoenicians learned the art of textile dyeing. They come from a very grand tradition in commerce and business. And I was like, wow. Isn't it funny how those words have been erased? Like we all used to say UFO, now we're supposed to say UDP or UAP, something stupid. I don't pay any attention to it. But for young people, if you get taught that, you're not going to know anything but what you're taught in this current time. And they've already constructed the internet to be an agent of European nationalist supremacy and racism, because they don't mention that the lands that the UN decided would go to the Khazarian Jews belong to very, very important biblical people that launched Western civilization. Talk about the prodigal son coming back to kill his father, huh? Phoenicians, Canaanites. Those are the people that occupied those lands. Now, I remember a long time ago, people saying that the Europeans want Gaza, that they want that beach land. So the amount of devastation that's been allowed to take place, it's been sanctioned by the UN when they put those people in that place, and sanctioned by the United States of America, appointed government and private agencies that financed the Khazarian Jews and all their weapons. And they said it was a matter of national security. And that's where you have to take your linguistics into account and understand that when an European says national security, they mean the protection of European nationalist racism as the foundation for a constructed economic system. Okay? So here I am trying to figure out, how come nobody's talking about the fact that the United Nations has done nothing for Black American people? And Black American people have been subjected to the worst anti-Black tactics that have ever been created. Okay? The apartheid that was developed here was deployed in South Africa and in the Arabian country where the Khazarian Jews live. They were deployed there. So we have a whole world that is accepting European nationalist racism and the domination of the Khazarians. And it just seems to defy logic. So I realize that most people probably do not understand logic because most people live in fear that if they think too much, if they know too much, if they honor the truth too much, it will lead to their demise. They will suffer a social death, which is poverty and victimization by criminals. And then they will suffer a real death, which is the loss of their human body. Okay? Loss of liberty along the way. So I said, let me do a lesson on logical fallacy. A logical fallacy, and my research all comes from Wikipedia. I gleaned these notes all from Wikipedia. So if you want to learn about it more, look at Wikipedia. But there is a point where the clear thinking teaching of Wikipedia breaks down. And I'll let you know in this conversation. It happens right after that part I was telling you about that's going to absolutely make those puzzle pieces click. Your machine is going to click and you're going to say, oh, I get it now. So when you have errors in your logic, that's when you have logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are built upon false premises. A premise is a foundational fact, a thought. A premise is where you begin your argument. An argument is the examination of a hypothesis or theory for its truth quotient. How much truth is here? So I'm just going to define terms because you have to understand the terms in order to understand the conclusions. And the underwriting question that I started with is, if the United Nations is not about justice for everyone, what premise guides the United Nations? What guides their actions and beliefs, the things that they act upon, if not the things they said that they were about? So these are some definitions from logic. Logic as it has been developed in philosophy. Okay? Yeah, I do need the glasses. Formal logic. Okay? There's formal logic and there's dialectical logic. Okay? Formal logic involves deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is almost mathematical, only you use ideas instead of numbers or mathematical variables. It's if this is true, then this is true. If A is true, is B true? That's how you do deductive reasoning. You have your arguments, which is saying, is B true? That would be your argument. You can say, is B true? And deductive reasoning involves inferences. That's when you assume things to be one way because of their similarities to things that are also that way. So you categorize something using inferences when they are the same. So A equals A is an inference. No, A equals B equals C would be an inference if you were to put it into mathematical statements. And I do that because Terrence Howard has me so excited about mathematics and my ability to understand mathematics now that he has knocked one of the logical fallacies of mathematics down. That you cannot have a loop. You cannot have you can't have an eternal loop in mathematics and expect mathematics to be definitive. It would be just like having a loop in your computer program. If you have a loop in your computer program, honey, that computer program will never end. It will simply consume the resources of your computer and go round and round and round and round and round and round and round. Unless you put a time limit on it, or or say, hey, if you get a loop, you've made a mistake. So even if the fundamental truth didn't hit you in the head when Terrence Howard said 1 × 1 = 2, you had to understand when he did the square root of something cubed or whatever and had it come up with an endless loop. Although I personally don't understand why it was cubed instead of squared. It seems to me like that's a departure from, a logical development there. Formal logic depends on inferences, extrapolations, premises, propositions, and most importantly, rational thinking. Rational thinking is thinking that can be duplicated by anybody with the same facts. And a fact is understood to be a truth that has been proven beyond any argument, that it's accepted as a fact. Like, my dress is orange. That's a fact. Whatever word you use for orange, that's the color of this dress. And if you can see this dress, you see that it's orange or gold, and that's a fact. Okay? If I were to say, oh no, this dress is blue, and you had a factual reference for blue, you would say, no, it's not. No, it's not. But if I said, yes, it is, and if you don't accept the fact that this dress is blue, I'm going to kill you, take your money, take your land, and throw you in jail. Well, that would be the beginning of dialectical logic, where you have to accept a lie as a fact. Okay? And the only way you would want to accept a lie as a fact is if you benefit from it or if you are punished over it. But in your mind, you would know the truth. But if you're not allowed to develop your mind, or you're filled with so much fear that you can't think, you can't be deductive, you can't get the proof of truth that you need, then you'll never acknowledge the truth, and you will be stuck with the dialectical logic that this dress is blue because I said so, and I have more power than you. Rational thinking is guided by reason, and reason is always duplicatable. It's not idiosyncratic. It's as steady as mathematics, right? It's as steady as any fact, okay? Reason is the conscious use of logic, where you test your theory, you test your hypothesis, you test it against any opposing theories or opposing proofs, and you prove it one way or another. And you examine it at such a level where you can get a definitive proof. The conscious use of logic to develop advanced thoughts is reason. Reason is duplicatable. Reason is thinking as a process. Reasoning is a tool of cognition, the process of churning out knowledge, the process of creating thoughts. Cognition is the acquisition, comprehension, and acceptance of thoughts. Cognition uses perception, attention, imagination, intelligence, calculation, comprehension, linguistics. Once your cognitive processes have determined one level of knowledge that has been tested and determined sound and reasonable and becomes established as true knowledge, you can generate a new body of knowledge on top of it, because now you've created a premise for your thoughts. A premise is a foundational beginning of a thought that is known to be true, known to be reliable. That's a premise. Cognition uses intellect. What is intellect? Intellect is the ability to determine the truth from a lie. Intellect is when you know, you know. And when you know what you know is true. Intellect involves the process of testing your thoughts using logic and other mental skills. So you use the science of logic and other mental skills as well. Okay? Now that is logic. But somewhere along the way, a German and a Russian, one named Hegel and one named Karl Marx, decided that there is something called dialectical logic. Okay? So logic existed from the Greek days of Socrates. And you'll find in Wikipedia that once you get into researching dialectical logic, that they frequently tell you just a little bit in very confusing language. And then they retreat to Socrates and Plato to try to stabilize the fact that dialectical logic means because I said so, and I have enough punishment power to hurt you if you don't act like it's true. Dialectical logic began as a way to force fascism on the European people. And with Hegel and his dialectical, his binary oppositions, he was actually able to codify and develop European nationalist racism and make it transportable. Why are you going to be prosecuted under laws I've created called slave laws? Because I said so. Why am I going to say your ancestors were slaves? Because I said so. Okay? Why do the people, Khazarian Europeans, own pieces of Arabia? Because I said so. That's dialectical logic. So dialectical means springing from a conversation, a dialogue, a discourse. Okay? It doesn't mean springing from a fact or a truth or a premise. It means springing from because I said so, and I have the power to hurt you if you don't do what I say do. In Neothink, we call that initiatory force. Okay? Because I said so. Dialectical logic uses points of view instead of reasoning and logic. Dialectical Logic was developed to overcome contradictions produced by formal logic. And formal logic is what you use to set premises that are true and factual. So in order to override those, overcome those true logical processes, formal logical, philosophical logical, Platonic, Socratic logic, the Germans and the Russians created dialectical logic and started teaching it. Dialectical logic lets you set premises that are false and force people to develop consequence and force people to develop formal logic based on a false premise. Okay? Which is totally illogical, ironically enough. Logic includes something called the laws of non-contradiction. And you'll find similar laws in mathematics. And the laws of non-contradiction say if A is true, and B is true, and C is true, then the conclusion, the sum of all that is true. Okay? So if all men are created equal in the eyes of God, then there would be no way that you could say that one race of men should be allowed to murder and rob from another and declare those people as inferior and declare those people as human stock, right? So if you accept as the premise that God created all of us equal and God loves us all and God created us all and put us in this space to be happy together, to develop societies, to develop businesses, to have families, to do the things that are pleasing to God, then everyone is entitled to protection under the law. Everyone is entitled to equal protection under the law. So if that's your premise, that everyone is entitled to everyone is entitled to equal protection from the law, then you can't have the next case say the United Nations as a protective agency of humanity should enable the Khazarians to displace the Arabs and take their place. You see, that's not logical. That is a dialectical logic that says, because I said so, and I have amassed enough power to use initiatory force to have my way. Because we're either all entitled to protection under the law or we're not. So we can't say that we are and then move forward in classical logic, in reason, and then come upon a premise that says, except this group of people. This group of people can do whatever they want. They can take from whomever they choose, and you just need to shut up about it because there's nothing that you can do to stop it. So the law of non-contradiction says that if all things are true, then the entire thing is true. But if there's one false thing in the set of ideas, then the entire set of ideas is invalid. Invalid. Para-consistent logic. Para-consistent logic is one of the many new terms that had to be created once dialectical logic became accepted as a weapon to use against the people at the level of society. Politics are included in society. So once Karl Marx, and I forget Hegel's first name, but German Hegel, once they decided that they were actually going to enter the academy and present a brand new form of logic that is based on because I said so, initiatory force, dialectical, based on conversations and unproven, even fallacious beliefs, fallacies. Once they decided that, they had to come up with a whole bunch of new terms like para-consistent logic. Para-consistent logic tolerates fabrications. So fabrications of reality, lies, deceptions, they are actually a part of para-consistent logic, which is a dialectical logic thinking process. Reasoning with false premises determines inconsistencies within an argument. So once you are using para-consistent logic, as your logical arguments are developing, as you prove each one, the one that's false rings true. So part of para-consistent logic is that you're going along and everything is in classical logic agreement. Everything is formally logical. And then suddenly you've got a dialectical element thrown in there that's obviously false. Well, para-consistent logic isolates that moment. And that's where para-consistent logic as a term takes effect at that very moment in your development of your logical reasoning process to determine knowledge that's based on truth. At that very moment, you've reached the moment of para-consistent logic, and they had to define that. Okay? And in Wikipedia, they even bring it all the way home for us by saying, quote, exists among groups holding opposing views on morality. I might have paraphrased that, but that's what it'll say right in Wikipedia. It even tells you the reason why para-consistent logic was named once it came into existence through dialectical logic. So once dialectical logic actually became a accepted science that people were going to develop within our linguistic and social systems, they developed these terms to define it. And they even recognized that para-consistent logic exists to justify immorality and raise immorality above question and establish immorality as a pseudo fact that you can build other levels of knowledge on, other levels that justify behavior. But it's outside of the system of cognition because it's not truly an acquisition of knowledge. It's an adaptation to threats. Rational beliefs are based on supportive evidence. To get supportive evidence, you examine actions and results, just like in any science. In any science, you look at the actions and the results of those actions. You look at the cause and the effect, and then you try to make a statement about it, make a conclusion about it, make a rationale about it, make a fact about it. And that's how you develop knowledge. Knowledge you can rely on, knowledge you can build upon, knowledge that is reliable because it's based in facts. Facts that are duplicatable, facts that are easily verified and proven, because anybody can look at it and see this dress is orange, this dress is gold, this dress is not blue. Anybody can look at it and know that's true. You don't need a special training. You don't need me to hold my fist up to your face. You don't need me to put my jackboots on your head. You can look at it and see the fact. You can look at it and know for yourself the truth. Reason is the whys. Okay, why? What are the reasons? So when you examine actions and results, you're constantly questioning, well, why did that happen? Well, gee, and you're observing too, right? You're saying, gee, I'm observing this happening. Oh, now that happened next. If this happens again, oh, it happened next again, right? So once you've established a fallacious argument that one race of people is superior and deserves to murder and kill and rob whomever they choose because everything should be theirs, then any other belief system built upon that uses that fallacious lie, that fabrication, that paraconsistent bit of logic, that flaw in cognition as the truth. So a conclusion can only be true if all premises are true. If every argument that you prove that creates a premise. So once you have an argument and that's your question, like, is this the truth or a lie? Well, once you've established that as a truth, it becomes a premise. And a premise is something you can build on, you can develop on. Well, once you've inserted a fallacious premise into your progression of arguments, well, then you're just in outer space, aren't you? You're creating an entire fallacy, aren't you? You're saying we're God's chosen people, and as God's chosen people, we have the right to murder and displace people from their homes. We have the right to go back to people that were established during biblical times and say, get out of here. We're from Europe. It belongs to us. And it always has. Three Stooges on you. Smack you in the face. Bump up you with the head. Because the dialectical logic has replaced the truthful premise. And all of the future premises are built on a stack of lies and deceptions. Inferences. Inferences come from deductions and inductions. A deduction is when you say, if A is true and B is true, then C is true. And an induction is different. An induction is derived from observation. So a deduction is a fact derived from facts. An induction is when you observe things and come to conclusions and you take it in like that. Now that's all the work that I did for this lesson that I've given to you. And I hope that you understand that the big climax I told you about was when I told you that the German Hegel and the Russian Marx are the ones that created the kind of logic that relies on lies, the kind of logic built on because I said so, that's why. And if you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill you. And that's the way it's going to be. So, Why did I want to talk about logic? Because I don't understand how the United Nations was able to establish as fact the idea that the Europeans in the Arabian nations, in the land of the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, I can't understand why the United Nations forced upon us the idea that they all belong there. And when I look at the United Nations, I see a paraconsistent logic. Was that the term for it? Paraconsistent fallacy? Paraconsistent logic. The UN represents paraconsistent logic to me. It's where suddenly inserted into a system of logic is a big fallacy that says the Khazarian Europeans are entitled to murder and rob from Arabs. And then I extrapolate that logic to what the European nationalist racists in American government and military have done here. Okay? First, they try to categorize all my people as slaves, and that's a great big lie. The Europeans did not have the technological advancement in supply chain shipping to bring all these black people to the Americas. It's a big lie designed to create a sense of obligation, superiority. But that lie created the language, the linguistic systems that they needed to create the paraconsistent logic that let them create laws that just across the board denied civil liberties, economic freedom, the right to happiness, the right to inheritances, the right to liberty to all the real American people. You see, to all of us, they denied. Yet the United Nations did nothing about that. Yet all the people in the world who say that's anti-Semitic don't even know what Semitism means in real life. They've been given to believe that Khazarians that became Jews after the time of Constantinople are actually the biblical people that occupied that land, which were Arabs. If you saw Jesus Christ, you would see an earth-toned, black-haired, brown-eyed, bearded Arab man. Okay, you would not see a Netanyahu. You would see a Netanyahu in Russia. You would see a Netanyahu in Germany. You would see a Netanyahu in, I don't even think you'd see a Netanyahu in Afghanistan. You wouldn't see one in Turkey. But you would see a Netanyahu in Russia. And you would see a Netanyahu in France. And you would see a Netanyahu in England. You wouldn't see a Netanyahu in Spain. And you wouldn't see a Netanyahu in Arabia. Yet the United Nations came out and said this is their ancient land. This land is important and significant to the Europeans. Well, hell yeah, because of the resources. Okay? Because when the United Nations put all of the Europeans there in the Arab lands and made all of the real Arab people that the Brits had named Palestinians go elsewhere, they said that they did it to be just and fair. They said that they did it to save a race. And that, my friends, is a lie. It's a lie that became a foundation for a building of logical truths. It's an inconsistent logic. It's a logical fallacy that spread all around the world. Now, everybody in the whole wide world is afraid to say it doesn't make any sense that Europeans are being permitted to murder and kill the Arabs and take their land. You see? But the Europeans worldwide, they can't afford to admit that, because once they admit that, they have to admit that they stole my land with the same lies. They have to admit all the land that they stole from the real Americans. And that means that the entire economy for Europeans, which is global European nationalism, would have to take a gigantic step back. They'd have to go to where they really belong, which is living on their own physical assets, their own raw materials in their own lands. So when you hear the Europeans say, well, it's a matter of national security, they don't mean us, honey. When a European says we, it never means us. Real Americans, real Africans, real Polynesians, real New Zealanders, real South Americans, real West Indians, real Arabs, real Persians, real Taiwanese. No. When the Europeans that create these inconsistencies, these logical fallacies, when they say we, it's paraconsistent logic. You're excluded if you're not European. So when they say, hey, it's a matter of our national security, they mean they're national by race. They're a racialized nation, the European nationalist nation. That's who they're referring to. And that's why you get things like Simon Parkes talking about American politics and investing in American politics as if he has an interest in us. Now, when I say us, I mean the real Americans, you know, the brown-skinned ones, the ones with crinky hair, the ones with straight black hair, the ones with brown eyes, you know, the ones that don't look European. All of us, the rest of us that are not European. That's what I mean when I say us. So just look at the level of distortion that puts on your mind as a human being. If you have to look at the world and accept as fact inconsistent logic, fallacies inserted as premises in your cognition stream, then what can you rely on, you know? What can you trust? If you have to trust the guy that went before you and you can't claim possession of yourself because you got to know what's the lie in action here? What lie are we telling? Then what kind of life are you living? Where's your authenticity as an individual? Where's your freedom as a person if you're not allowed to recognize pure, unbridled logic? If you're not allowed to do your cognitive processes with facts instead of lies designed to make you accept the murder and theft and victimization of entire races of people by just one group, that's what you're bowing to. You're bowing to that lie. And once that lie is undone, I'll be able to get my inheritance, because every lie that depends upon that lie will be unveiled. It will be illogical. Once you pull out that first foundational premise that one race of people is entitled to murder and rob another race of people because they said so, and they can beat your butt if you don't like it. But once you take that para-consistent logic out of the equation, everything built upon it falls. And that will be the fall of Western civilization. And the fall of Western civilization would be the rise of everyone if we could pull it off.